There he is.
There he
Future
is.
Hall of Famer,
Future
boys
Hall
and
of
girls.
Famer William Huey Jensen.
And he is facing against Jack Colwell on the left. We had Jack on camera a little bit earlier. He actually dispatched of Jason Bukowski, one of his good friends, a little bit earlier with his blue-white helm deck. He has 3 main deck rest in peace, which is pretty good against the dredge deck, I suppose. I don't know much, but I do know that. Huey playing Sneak and Show, and you see both players taking a look at each other's deck list. We have them here. You guys can also look at them at home on the Star City Games website in the coverage area. So, obviously, this is a matchup that I think is actually pretty close. As you just see Jack taking a look here, catching his breath after that marathon affair.
Yeah, and, again, Huey's I think this definitely favors Huey because he had a lot of time to watch that match, look at the deck list, kind of figure out what do I need to do. And again, you give a guy like Huey enough time to prepare. He's like B.A. Baracus in the A-Team. You give me an hour, I'm great. You give me a day, I'm amazing, So I think Huey's the type of guy where you give him enough time to prepare for a matchup, he's definitely going to figure out exactly what he needs to do to win.
Now, is that the old B.A. Baracus, or is that Rampage from the new A-Team?
It's Rampage from the new one. I'm sorry, it's been on FX a lot, so I've been
that's understandable.
watching that version a lot.
I don't blame you. I watched it 3 times on the way home from Amsterdam. It's really good, actually.
I love Jessica Biel.
It has no business being good, and it's actually really good. Just so that you guys know, if you're looking for a good bad movie, the A-Team, Liam Neeson, when he's not saving his family. Actually did a pretty nice job in that movie.
Liam Neeson's just such a boss.
He's a horrible actor.
I'm surprised he doesn't play Magic, though. I think he would really love Magic.
He's a horrible actor, I think.
Liam Neeson?
Yeah, I said it.
A horrible actor?
I said it.
Oh, my God.
I meant it, too.
Don't like Liam Neeson's acting. Think Phoenix is a great travel destination. What's the matter with you? This is the Summer Bloom deck. Like, you're batting 1,000 today here.
I'm my own man. I really am. There's nothing great about Liam Neeson. I'm sorry.
So the match is about to get underway. Players are drawing their hands. Again, Huey is the top seed in this matchup, so he's going to choose to play first, and that looks like a keep. Jack is currently looking at his hand. Not nearly as confident as Huey. A little bit of a shrug.
It looks like you see a Force of Will in his hand. You actually
see a lot of Force.
That's a lot of Force of Wills. That's either 2 or 3 Force of Wills.
Yeah.
You see a Brainstorm as well. Sensei's Divine Top. I'm going to assume there's a land in there as well. As you see, Huey's going to kick off this match with a Ponder. We are underway here in the semifinals of the Star City Games Open Series in Las Vegas. We are going to crown a Legacy champion here soon, I promise. I don't think we're going to have any more marathon affairs here, but I've been wrong before, and we'll be wrong again.
Yeah, it's definitely, this is the type of hand where it's like, Jack can do a pretty good job of stopping Huey from going off early. But again, Huey knows kind of how to play this matchup. I think he's not gonna pull the trigger early unless he's confident. So he might just try to be content with building up his board position for the first few turns, and getting to a place where he just has inevitability because he just has too many counter spells.
Okay, now I want to make sure something, because I've been wrong before. Jack has a land in his hand, right? Because he has a bunch of Force of Wills and a counterbalance and a Sensei top. Sorry.
Again, we are across the room, and there aren't many people in the room, so everything we say is being amplified. So yes, to your point, it appears as he kept a no land. But again, Jack knows he's playing against Sneak and Show, so maybe he's just like, okay, I have 3 Force of Wills. I can Force of Will every single spell you have. But this kind of plays into perfectly to what Huey wants to do, because Huey's just going to keep sculpting a perfect hand and just keep making mana, But again, it's a bold move. I'm not going to say it's not bold, keeping a no land on the draw. But, 3 Force of Wills, maybe that's just really, really something that, Jack is hoping for. Doesn't appear to draw land there.
No, just discard Sensei's Divine Top.
This guy's a non-blue card.
Huey's gonna bust the Misty Rainforest on his upkeep. Search for a land here. You're gonna see him get a Volcanic Island. Not worried about Wasteland, obviously.
And the thing is, this plays perfectly into what Huey wants to do, because Huey just has such a good read on players. So now he basically knows, okay, I know exactly what's in his hand. There's no way he keeps a no land hand without even mulliganing, without at least 3 Force of Wills. So Huey knows, even without doing anything, Huey now has perfect information as to what's in Jack's hand. And Huey can play the game exactly according to that plan. You know, so he has at least one, and it looks like Huey has a second forcible too. So
All right, so show and tell time. This is resolving. Oh, wow.
oh wow. So not the worst thing because again, Huey will be able to draw a bunch of cards here.
All right, well, okay. So one card we didn't see in Jack's hand. We didn't see Venture there.
Yes, Williams Investor. So again, another reasonable, another reason why he may have kept this hand because you have multiple Force of Wills. He does have a Brainstorm too and a counterbalance, and he also has the Venture to protect himself against the show and tell. So again, kind of makes sense now. But is it correct? I'm not sure. But clearly he's tested this matchup more, so maybe he's aware in terms of what to actually have to play against.
All right, so Huey's drawn 7 cards for Griselbrand. He's brought himself down to 12 life, and Griselbrand is going to go back into the grip. Huey is maybe considering activating that Griselbrand again and moving down to 5, but then Venser becomes a very real clock at that point. So
yeah, and Huey does have a second show and tell in his hand that we know about. Now the question is because of Jack has at least 2 Force of Wills. I'm not sure if he has 6 blue cards in his hand in total, so I'm not sure if he's able to cast all 3 of those Force of Wills. But we know he has at least 2 Force of Wills, so it's going to be tough for Huey to try to force through the second show and tell. But so I'm not sure he wants to go into 5 because again Huey probably knows that Jack has multiple Force of Wills in his hand. And Huey deciding what he wants to discard here, has to discard down to 7. The Griselbrand went back to his hand. Looks like he's just trying to sculpt the perfect hand. Can't quite see, keeping it right off camera, but it looked like he had at least 1 Force of Will.
Okay.
Which I believe he had even prior to the Griselbrand activation. So maybe drew a second there. Really, really great position for him here because even a spell snare is great. So if he has like a City of Traders, he can cast the show and tell next turn with a spell pierce backup as well as the Force of Will that we know he has. So still pretty good shape for Huey, despite the fact that Jack had a Venser in play.
You see he's going to discard a mid full of cards. None of the cards are really going to matter that he discards too much. He's going to shuffle them back in. Jack's going to get the information there, and obviously Emrakul is one of those cards that's just is discarded. Excuse me. Griselbrand being another one of them, but Huey's basically set up a perfect 7-card hand. We'll get a draw step on his next turn to move himself up to 8, and we'll see if he will be able to put a huge threat into play and actually have it stay this time.
Yeah. So we know that Huey knows that Jack only has 1 Venser in his deck, so probably not too afraid of. There was also a Caracas in Joe's deck, but again, he probably would have, played it. Again, it's a land, but again, Huey. We know Huey has a show and tell. We know he has a Force of Will. Looks like he drew another Force of Will, and we know he has the Griselbrand. So if he manages to have a City of Traders here, it's pretty good shape for him to be able to force this one through.
Here we go. Show and tell. You're going to see a Force of Will removing a counterbalance from Jack. Huey's going to fight back with a Force of Will, removing a blue card. They're both going to take a point of damage. To do that, we're going to see more of a fight here. Force of Will removing a Ponder there from Jack.
So,
all right, so it's going to be a Ponder from Jack.
Doesn't look like Huey. Looks like Huey might not have enough permission here. Looks like he only has another Force. Mm-hmm. But he does have a sneak attack though. Okay. So it looks like he's setting up next turn.
Jack has another. He has a land now, and he also has another Forcible and a blue card. He has Forcible, Brainstorm. Yeah. So Huey's going to draw a card. You see it's a Scalding Tarn. And you see Huey is going to cast.
I think he maybe he's doesn't want to play the Scalding Tarn first because he doesn't want to give away the fact that he can activate the.
Yeah.
Oh, he also has a City Trader, so
yep.
He's going to tap the mana first.
Kind of second guessing himself on what he wants to do here. This is obviously, this was an outlandish keep by Jack, not in a bad way, just something that we've never really seen before.
It's definitely risky, but again, if Huey just maybe waits a little longer, maybe he's in a position where he's able to actually. And I wonder if Huey should have just played the land here because Spell Pierce becomes actually another way that Jack can counter this spell, but maybe he doesn't want to play around Spell Pierce, so Looks like Jack's just going to brainstorm here. Again, if he draws the fourth Force of Will, but I don't think he's only going to be able to force one. So it looks like draws 3 cards, has to put 2 back, have 3 left in his hand. The Caracas draw would be huge here, or the Tension Sphere. Yeah, there's that.
1, 2, and 3. So a bunch of bricks there. He's basically going to be brainstorm locked for at least a turn.
Yeah. So Huey's going to be. Looks like Huey's going to be able to resolve the sneak if he does in fact have a Force of Will in his hand. They're hard to pitch to it.
We know that Huey does have a Force of Will in his hand. The question is, does he have a blue card in his hand?
Yeah.
And we see Jack has a Force of Will here, and he's going to remove Jason the Mind Sculptor. And let's see if Huey. You see, Huey has a Force.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's good to go. So now the question is, does Huey have a sneak attack or another show and tell? If he had a show and tell, I think he would have fought. But does he have a sneak attack, another sneak attack in his hand? That we don't know, because I mean, you can assume that he has a huge guy in his hand. He's going to take a draw step here.
Show and tell is not, not really what he's looking for because of the fact show and tell would be much worse, especially now that we know that Jack has a Jason the Mind Sculptor.
Well, Jace you can't put in with show and tell.
Oh, okay. So it looks like doesn't look like Huey has much action left. But does he have a show and tell there?
Well, we see at least one copy.
Looks like there's a misdirection.
Yeah, we see at least one copy misdirection. You know he has a Force of Will. You know he has a big guy in his hand as well, but he is under the gun here. As far as life total, he's at 5. If he wants to sacrifice, to clear away with this brainstorm, he's going to have to go down to 4 and lose that City of Traders. And right now he's on a 3-turn clock. If he sacrifices that Scalding Tarn, it's going to put him on a 2-turn clock. So he's certainly got some big-time decisions to make right now.
Yeah, wow. This, again, Jack's opener looked so sketchy, but he knew exactly. 3 Force of Wills and a Venser. Solid 7 cards, I guess, if you're playing against show and tell.
I mean, do you think Huey pulled the trigger too fast on trying to go off? I mean, when his opponent is just not playing anything, he can sculpt as long as he wants to. He could have sculpted longer than 2 turns.
I think Huey probably should have waited a little longer. I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume your opponent has 3 Force of Wills, just given how things went, but. Again, he probably didn't plan for the Venser. Again, we didn't see the Venser. We didn't really think about it. We knew the Force of Wills, but again, Venser definitely seemed like a surprise for Huey.
You see the draws there for Jack off the brainstorm. You see a Tundra, a Blood Moon, and a Flooded Strand. He's going to put in Treat the Angels and Blood Moon back on top of his deck. Resolve the brainstorm. You see the Flood Strand come into play, so he can sacrifice those guys away.
Are those 2 lands in his hand, or is one of them a Vanilla Click?
One of them is a land. I'm not sure on the other card, but he does have a Tundra in his hand. As you're going to see Huey go down to 2 here.
So it looks like Jack's hand is a Vendilion Click and a Tundra. So Huey's under a lot of pressure right here. Vendilion Click threatens to come into play next turn.
Yeah, and if Huey does cast Show and Tell, because he does go down to 2 here. From that fetch land,
the click will come into play. But again, Grizzlebrand, the life gain ability will. Yep. So as long as Jack doesn't draw like a Path to Exile or anything like that, Huey should still be fine. But yeah, he really needs one of those action spells. Preferably, probably a sneak attack. But I'm not sure he has another mana even. So probably just needs a show and tell here.
All right, let's see what he's going to. Okay, so he's going to untap. He's going to draw a card. It is a show and tell.
Like a champ. Like, is this going to be good enough? I'm so glad that was a flash and someone took a picture of that moment. That is the look of a man who's got a tough decision ahead of him.
Yes, it is.
Although, again, I think, he pretty much has to cast it, right? Like.
Well, I mean, he's facing lethal attack. He absolutely has to cast it. And you see, he's gonna play Land Prayer on Spell Pierce, and he's gonna cast Show and Tell. Now, if he has a Gristlebrand in hand, he is good to go, as you see.
So Gristlebrand comes in.
Is it Gristlebrand? It's Emrakul.
Oh.
Yep. It's Emrakul. The Vendilion Click effect is gonna go on the stack.
So It looks like he's just going to die to the attack.
He's going to attack with both, and that's it.
Did he not have the Griselbrand?
No, I mean, I think he would have put Griselbrand in play if he had one, so leads me to believe that he does not have one in his hand, and that's it. So Huey, you see him a little bit surprised there to lose a game where his opponent doesn't play a land for the first couple turns of the game, but he is down a game here to Jack Colwell, and Jack kind of laughing about that one. A very, very speculative keep, but it worked out for him. So,
are we sure that Huey didn't have Griselbrand in his hand?
I'm not 100%
because I know I know he had it from the beginning. Venser bounced it.
He discarded it to.
Did he end up discarding it? Was that one of the ones?
Yeah, he discarded. He discarded an Emrakul and a Griselbrand on that turn where he drew 7 cards.
Okay.
He sculpted his hand in such a way, and he did not keep a Griselbrand around because I think it's pretty clear he would have put that in if he had.
Well, I mean, not necessarily because. Again, maybe he was trying to play around Path to Exile, or again because there's not many creatures in Jack's deck. He knows that, and with only 2 cards, it's reasonable that they're just two random spells in his hand.
Sure.
So maybe he's just trying to play around, Path to Exile, or but again, likely he just maybe discarded the Griselbrand and didn't have it.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly discarded 1 off of the turn where he drew 7 cards, sculpted his hand, and passed. So, trivia time.
Trivia time.
Time to give away 6 months before we analyze the sideboards of this match here. Most of us can ask you guys a question. If you guys are on Twitter, which apparently some people are, send us the answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium. We will select one winner of the people who do get it correct. Of course, it's not about speed, it's about accuracy. And one of those winners will get 6 months without any further ado.
Okay. So what is the name of the legendary creature in Jack Colwell's deck that allows him to bounce any permanent or spell to their owner's hand? It was played an integral role in the game that we just saw, so maybe that's a hint. Not sure.
It's also Planeswalker. How about that? We'll throw that out there.
Oh, it also has a Planeswalker type.
Yeah, we'll throw that out there too. Make it a little bit easier for you guys. If you do know the answer to that, of course, do hashtag SCG Premium. Send us the answer on Twitter. Again, we will draw from one of the winners. It is again not about speed, but about accuracy. So 6 months is up for grabs, and we will give it away after this round is over. But we are going to take a look at the sideboards here. Huey down a game here has 4 copies of Leyline of the Void, 4 copies of Leyline of Sanctity, 2 copies of Echoing Truth, 3 Red Elemental Blast, and 2 copies of Through the Breach. I think it's pretty safe to say that those 3 red Elemental Blasts are going to come in. The other things I'm not so sure. Leyline of the Void, probably doesn't have much of a home here. Leyline of Sanctity, I don't think that Jack has any discard in his deck or anything to worry about there. 2 copies of Echoing Truth. Huey has the deck list just like we do, so maybe there are some enchantments that he's going to want to bounce with Echoing Truth. And then those 2 copies of Through the Breach are a unique way to be able to get a Griselbrand or Emrakul through, but don't know if he actually needs to do that or not. It is a nice way to kind of try to one-up a Venser, Shaper Savant, however.
Yeah, I mean, Jack has cards like the Tension Sphere and Humility in his sideboard, which can be difficult for Huey to deal with. So he might want to have cards like Through the Breach and Echoing Truth as sort of ways to either deal with them or not worry about them getting into play off a show and tell. And yeah, things get a lot harder for Huey after board. Jack has 3 copies of Red Elemental Blast. He has a Vendilion Click, another Vendilion Click they're going to bring in, and again those 2 enchantments that I mentioned that are good to shutting down cards like Emrakul or Griselbrand. So looks like he might be bringing in a total of 6 cards, but he has cards he can board out. Like Blood Moon's not very good in this matchup. He's got a couple of Entreat the Angels, which again don't really think he wants in this matchup. I think his game plan is to just try to win with either Jace the Mind Sculptor or a Vendilion Click. He doesn't have to do much to win. He basically just needs to stop Huey from winning. Elspeth Night Iron, again, not very good in this matchup. And Rest in Peace, obviously, is the 3 of that's immediately going out. So yeah, it looks like it's pretty much a easy swap for Jack. And again, Jack's probably tested this matchup a lot, and that's one of the issues when you're playing a deck like Sneak and Show that's so popular. It's that like as long as they're prepared, they're going to know how to play against you, and they're going to have some plan against you. Yep. Because Sneak and Show, it won the Open a couple of weeks ago, or the New Jersey one, I believe. Made a couple. Pretty much, you see at least one in every top 8.
Yeah, just about nowadays.
So it's I don't know if it's the top dog, but it's close. It's close to being the top dog of the format. So that's the thing. When you play a deck like that, it's very good. It's very consistent. But every one of your opponents is pretty much going to know what to do against you and have some sort of plan. So looks like Jack has a pretty good plan against Huey after board, and being up a game already, he's in a pretty good shape right here.
So we do see both players are pretty happy with how they have sideboarded here. And they are shuffling up here, ready to present the decks to each other. So we'll see exactly how they have sideboarded back and forth. Huey probably a little bit stunned that he did lose that game. His opponent did not play land for the first couple of turns, but I think he has been playing Magic long enough to not be horribly fazed by that. Jack obviously feeling pretty good about that win, and that is a very controversial keep, but it did work out for him.
Yeah.
So
if a giant sandwich can't face Huey, a loss can't either. So
yeah.
I'm not too concerned with Huey being phased here. It's just a matter of can he deal with the sheer amount of permission that Jack's going to have after sideboard. I mean, Jack, we saw 3 Force of Wills game 1, but Jack's got Force of Will. He's now going to have a Red Elemental Blast. So he's got permission, but he also has very annoying cards that can come into play off of Show and Tell. And he also has a card like Vendilion Click, which is great for Jack because he doesn't have to tap main phase. Can cast it at the end of Huey's turn. Gets to look at Huey's hand, gets perfect information, gets to take a powerful card out of it, and it gives him a clock. And again, Huey really doesn't have any ways to deal with it other than like a Red Elemental Blast, so which he's probably going to try to use on some of the permissions. So Jack's deck after board is pretty good against Huey's, I think.
Well, we'll see how it's going to end up playing out here, as we do have Jack taking a mulligan here. Huey's going to keep his opener, so he's pretty happy. If you're Huey, one of the things that with Sneak and Show, which is kind of interesting, is that with this deck, it does have the ability to go from turn 1, potentially even turn 2. With the City of Traders plus Lotus Petal plus Show and Tell. Now, these games are few and far between, but they do happen, and it's kind of interesting. Do you pull the trigger if you have that hand as Huey? Because it does get broken up by Force of Will. And it can get broken up by some of the things that Jack can put into play, and then you're pretty deflated because you've pretty much moved all in at that point. Your City of Traders will die. If it's an Ancient Tomb, it's one thing, but let's say, just for sake of example, it is a City of Traders. Do you move in on turn 1 and hope for the best, especially when you see Jack mulliganing here?
After board, I think it's tough too because there's just a lot of cards that can come into play off of Show and Tell, that can, especially more so than in game 1. So yeah, Force of Will is a way to stop it. But on top of that, anything that he puts into play, like a card like Caracas, Venser that we saw. So there are just more cards that can come into play off of a Show and Tell out of Jack's deck that might concern Huey with trying to pull the trigger turn 1. But if Huey has a Force of Will and his opponent mulligan to 6, I think Huey might just try to go for it. I think it's reasonable because, again, even though there's like 4 cards in Jack's deck that can come into play off of it, I think Huey might just play the odds here.
When we see Jack's hand here, he has 2 copies of Red Elemental Blast. He has a Force Will to go along with a Counterspell and a Terminus. So quite a good mulligan, but again, he is land light, but it worked out for him last time. We'll see if it works out for him this time as well, as we see Huey sacrificing a Misty Rainforest. Right now, might be setting up a Brainstorm here. One thing that we do know is that he can search out Volcanic Islands with no fear.
Yeah.
Because no Wastelands from Jack's deck, but he's going to search out just a basic island here.
Might be afraid of Blood Moon randomly.
Sure.
But again, Jack does have double Pyroblast, but he a Red Elemental Blast, but he is land light, and he also he has a Force of Will, but doesn't look like he has that many blue cards to pitch. I think there's maybe a counterspell.
There's a counterspell in his hand.
Counterspell. So he's got Counterspell, Terminus, double Red Elemental Blast, and Jace the Mind Sculptor. So he effectively has 4 counterspells, but because he's land light, he could probably only realistically cast 2 of them in one turn. So we'll see what he draws this turn.
You see, he's going to sacrifice a Flooded Strand here. Looks like he's going to search out a Volcanic Island, and he's going to fight over the manipulation of Huey instead of the big spell. So Huey is casting a Ponder, and you see that Jack has searched out a Volcanic Island. Looks like we're going to see the first of 2 Red Elemental Blasts take care of that. Interesting to see it, that he's choosing to fight over the cards that sculpt instead of the cards that are actually the game winners in Show and Tell and Sneak Attack.
I actually like that play just because if you look at Jack's deck list, he only has 1 Volcanic Island. So he actually doesn't have another red source in his deck. So despite the fact that he has 2 Elemental Blasts in his hand, he won't actually be able to cast 2 of them in the same turn.
Sure.
So he might be just thinking, okay, I'm going to just try to slow you down a little bit, not let you manipulate your deck as much, and just get the spell in when I can. But again, I think this right now favors Huey, and he's playing sort of the way that I expected him to game 1. Just continue to build up his mana base. Play this more like a control matchup,
So we do see both players going back and forth here. Jack does finally draw a second land, which is Nared Mesa. He has an Entreat the Angels in his hand. That was one of his draws as well. Huey has just played a few lands here and says go. You see a Lotus Petal in his hand along with the Red Elemental Blast. Not sure if he has a Sneak Attack or a Show and Tell, but if you're Huey right now, you have to think to yourself, how the last game just played, where Jack kept a very land-light hand that had a ton of Force of Wills. You've already seen a Red Elemental Blast, so he's got permission. Let's see, is it time to go for it? Can I win this battle? And we're going to see Huey go for it right now with a Show and Tell.
And based on what in Huey's hand, it looks like he's going to be able to win this battle. He has a Red Elemental Blast and a Spell Pierce, I believe. So despite the fact that Jack also has a Force of Will, looks like he's going to be able to resolve this one.
So we're going to see a Red Elemental Blast here targeting the Show and Tell, and we'll see exactly how Huey wants to go about fighting over this here. Because the one thing to keep in mind here is that this Show and Tell could just be one of those test Show and Tells.
Yes.
Where it's just like, I'm playing this and I don't actually have anything. I just want to get a counterspell or 2 out of you, which we have seen this before from other Show and Tell players.
That's true. But again, because Jack's a little land light, I'm not so sure he wants to do that because again, Huey has to assume he's either got a bunch of spells in his hand, or maybe one of his creatures like a Vendilion Click. And again, he only has 2 mana, so it's reasonable that there is a Vendilion Click there, and he just wasn't able to cast it. Or he's going to drop like a Humility in play or something.
Well, we're going to see a Spell Pierce here targeting that Red Elemental Blast. So the counter war has begun, and you see Jack looking at that Force of Will and blue cards to remove to that. Spell Pierce is going to take care of that. You're going to see Force of Will remove Jace the Mind Sculptor, going to have Jack lose a life point. Huey going to cast a Red Elemental Blast of his own on that Force of Will. And now you see Jack taking a look at his hand. You see the white cards. You see the counter spell that he can't cast. Show and Tell is going to resolve, and you're going to see Huey put into play.
Oh, wow. And
a Gristlebrand.
And he has a Force of Will left in his hand, so he's going to be able to draw, if he wants, 14 cards this turn.
Yep.
Make sure that he's able to counter anything that he's worried about. So let's see what he's drawing. He has 2 Force of Wills, a Brainstorm,
you see a
Ponder, so he has 2 cards that he can pitch to both the Force of Will. So doesn't need to draw any more cards. Got a pretty good setup here.
Yep, he discards the card to hand size, which is a Scalded Tarn. And does Jack draw a Terminus? He does not. He draws an Enlightened Tutor for the turn.
He can... I don't think there's anything he can Enlighten Tutor for that's cheap enough for him to also be able to cast. So looks like Huey's going to be able to attack and draw 7 more cards.
He'll be able to fully sculpt his hand now. As you see him bring a Sneak Attack to the forefront, you see he does have a couple copies of Misdirection. He also has a couple copies of Force Will in his hand. He's going to draw 7 in his main phase right now. As he does have that Sneak Attack, he's probably looking for a Lotus Petal, maybe an Emrakul, to be able to get
or just
Jack,
a 5th land.
Yeah, just to get Jack done with in 1 full turn, so we don't have to play any more turns of this game. You see Huey going through things, so you're going to see him cast. Yep, you're going to see him cast a Sneak Attack here. Has the Volcanic Island available to be able to activate. But Jack is going to crack that Air Mesa and cast a Counterspell.
Very good artwork on that Counterspell. So we have a Force of Will here.
You're going to see Misdirection. Take care of that.
Misdirection. So, yeah, it looks like Huey just wants to end this game right now. Kind of afraid of Caracas.
And he says, all right, I've got the Sneak Attack. I've got the Emrakul. I'm going to attack you for... plenty. Trigger that, and Jack is going to scoop it up. So we are going to move along to game 3 here. Huey Jensen does tie things up. We'll see if Jack keeps a few more lands this go around.
Well, again, Jack kept a permission-heavy hand, land light, but unlike the first game, he didn't have nearly enough. He didn't have free counterspells. He actually had to pay mana for them. So, land light hand. With those types of counterspells, not the best situation to be in, because even though you have a lot of them, you can't cast them all in the same turn when you need to. So realistically, in order to in order to deal with Huey's threats, Huey's not going to go for it unless he also has at least 2 ways to stop you, like with counter spells. So realistically, you're going to need to be able to cast 3 counter spells in a turn.
Okay.
So Jack was able to do that game 1, wasn't able to do it in game 2. So we'll see what happens in game 3.
Yes, we will, as we do see both players going back. Huey going back to his sideboard, at least you see Jack shuffling things back up here.
And interesting, it looked like Jack kept Elspeth in.
Yeah, a little bit surprised by that as well. That's not a card he can put in with Show and Tell, because Show and Tell doesn't allow you to put Planeswalkers into play before those cards ever existed. And it is a very, very slow way to go about winning. So I am as well a little bit surprised to see that in his deck after sideboard.
Yeah, because, you know, again, Rest in Peace is easy to come out for Relative Mental Blast, but, you know, Geist of Saint Traff, probably don't want that, but, you know, I definitely thought he would bring in another click, the Humility, a Detention Sphere, but we'll see how this game goes. Again, both of these games basically came down to permission,
Yeah.
Except for the one game with the one of Jay's, Benzer rather.
So we see Huey going back to the drawing board a little bit here. Again, he is working with nearly perfect information. He has access to the deck list just like you guys do at home, as do Osip and I here in the booth. Not entirely sure how Jack did sideboard, but I mean, Huey's not surprised to see Red Elemental Blast come in. But as far as, you know, those silver bullets for those Enlightened tutors, you're not sure which way he's going. If he did bring in the Humility, did he bring in, you know, his additional counterbalance? The Detention Sphere is probably in as well, as that's a beating off of Show and Tell. So you're not quite sure what cards he's brought in and brought out, but Huey's going to analyze the deck list, see if he wants to re-sideboard, and then get to work here. You just see him shuffling away, happy with what he's got for his 60 this game.
Yeah, and, you know, Jack has 22 lands, 4 Brainstorms, and a Ponder, so it's unlikely he's going to get mana screwed for a 3rd straight game. And again, as long as he's able to consistently make his mana drops, or land drops, I think he's still in a good position against Huey, just because of the sheer amount of counterspells he has.
Sure.
And annoying cards like Vendilion Click, and Venser Shaper Savant. So I think Jackson, as long as Jack's able to make his land drops, I think he's still in pretty good shape against Huey. But I guess we'll see.
I think, you know, I don't even think it's a case of Jack really getting mana screwed. I think he's willingly keeping these land-light hands. You know, because his deck doesn't have that many lands. It does have 22, but having to Brainstorm and Ponder for lands, you're still going to keep land-light hands because your deck just doesn't have very many.
Yeah, and again, it's he only has 1 Ponder. Huey has only 18 lands in his deck, but again, he has 4 Ponder, 4 Brainstorm, and 1 Preordain. So a little more manipulation there. He's able to smooth out his draws a little bit more, try to make his land drops more consistently. So again, I think the way Huey really wants to approach this match is just make sure he makes his land drops, try to outmana his opponent, and if you're able to outmana your opponent, then it doesn't really matter how many counterspells they have, because they can't cast all of them.
Yeah.
You know? And the great thing is that if Huey looks at Jack's deck list, he'll see only 1 Volcanic Island.
Sure.
So even if Jack has like 2 or 3 Red Elemental Blast, it doesn't matter. He's only going to be able to cast 1 of them in the fight.
And one thing not to forget as well is, even though, of course, you know, Huey only does have 18 lands in his deck, there are double lands here with 2 City of Traders and 3 Ancient Tombs, and don't forget about those 4 Lotus Petals as well. So he may only have 18 lands on paper, but it's a lot more than that in reality.
Yeah, and I wonder if Huey brought in the Through the Breach as well. Oh, so it looks like Jack's keeping. Can't see how many lands there are there, but he definitely has a Force of Will. Oh, it looks like he has 2 islands.
Yeah, you see 2 islands
So
right
it
off
looks
the bat.
that might be a counterbalance actually. I can't tell.
Let's see if Huey is happy with what he has here. And
No.
he is not. So he's going to go down to at least 6 for this final game here.
So he was going to 6. Looks like Jack actually has more than 1 land in his opener this time. So we'll see how this plays out. And again, you know, Huey's deck can mulligan pretty well, so I don't think he's too concerned. But it's interesting to see whether or not Huey decides to be a little more aggressive, with the way he plays this game, going down to 6 cards. You know, maybe he thinks, okay, I'm a little behind now. Maybe I'll just try to go for the turn 1 kill. You know, sometimes when players feel like they're behind, you know, even though you're just mulliganing once, you could feel like you're behind if you're on the draw or something. So you might play a match a little more aggressively than you would normally. But again, Huey's a pro. He's been playing for a while, so maybe he's just. I don't think he's going to get rattled or shaken or anything like this.
Yeah, I think he'll do what he's done so far over the course of this weekend, which is try to identify what his opponent has in his hand, try to make a proper read on the situation, and pick his spots as best he can with the information that he's given. A quick update for you guys in our other match here, as we are in Game 3 here between Huey Jensen and Jack Colwell. Jacob Corey is going to be moving on to the finals with 10 fins. He has won his match 2-0, taking care of a sneak and show deck. So congratulations to Jacob. We'll be seeing one more match of you, and maybe Jacob will be able to get his rematch against William Jensen in the finals. We'll see.
And pretty excited. Fun to see that deck.
Yeah, we're gonna get 10 fins one more time for you guys.
And he's the we said that was gonna be a tough matchup for him, or at least the tester, test of whether or not this deck's the real deal or not. So looks like he's proven it.
And we are underway here for Game 3 as Jack is going to lead off with an island. Huey is happy with his 6. Game 3.
Wow, and a pretty good hand of all the 3. I mean, this might be the best that we've seen of his openers. I mean, he actually has 2 mana. He has a Brainstorm, a Force of Will, a Counterbalance, a Red Elemental Blast. So if he draws a sack land here, he's going to be pretty well set up. The following turn.
You see Entreat the Angels, Brainstorm, and Force of Will are his draws here. So he is momentarily going to be Brainstorm locking himself. You do see those Force of Wills. You do see those blue cards. You also see 2 more copies of Brainstorm as well. So he can, manipulate his library a little bit more here, but it just does not have a fetch land to clear things away. Redraws to an Elemental Blast. You're going to see him play a Naked Counterbalance and pass the turn.
And do we know what the top card is? Or was it the Entreat?
It is the Entreat. So it's converted mana cost of 3.
So okay, so he has he can counter Show and Tell with the Counterbalance if he wants to. And he's able to pitch 2 cards to Force of Will. So he's able to counter 2 spells with Force of Will, and he still has a Brainstorm and a 3-drop on top of his deck. So.
And you see Huey is thinking a little bit here, and he's gonna Force of Will that Counterbalance, which if you're Jack, you're probably pretty happy about that.
Yeah, and
and Jack is going to fight back. A little surprised by that is, he does have some control over the top part of his deck, but that's one permission spell that, Huey has gotten out of the way now. And you're going to see a Volcanic Island, you're going to see a Show and Tell, and 3 is the number of the day. As Show and Tell goes to the bin, and Huey's just left with 1 land right now. Jack draws Entreat the Angels and passes the turn back. Huey take a draw step, and you see a Ponder here. So let's see if the Counterbalance is going to be good.
Does he trigger the
if he even triggers it. And he is going to trigger it and cast Brainstorm. Counterbalance, Tundra, and Detention Sphere are the cards drawn there for Jack Colwell.
Yep, so it looks like he's going to put a Red Elemental Blast on top of his deck and counter the Ponder.
And Entreat the Angels will be the card that goes underneath. Red Elemental Blast takes care of the Ponder. Huey does not have a second land and tosses it back. Red Elemental Blast into Jack's hand. You see the Tundra come into play. Another copy of Counterbalance in his hand as well, but he's probably going to hold on to that for the Force of Will.
Yeah. So Huey doesn't have much action right here. It looks like he might have a Brainstorm, but no. Draws the Entreat.
Passes the turn back. And Huey did draw a Brainstorm that turn, but he doesn't have his fetch land, but he does now. He just drew into one. And now you're going to see a Brainstorm, so let's see if a Naked Counterbalance is going to hit it. And it's a Misty Rainforest, which is good for Huey, but also kind of bad.
Because it turns on the Red Elemental Blast, allows him to search for a Volcanic Island. So, Huey's not out of it yet. Just needs to draw a significant number of Echoing Truth. The Counterbalance is an option for him. But yeah, Huey's definitely a little bit behind here.
Yeah. At this point, it kind of wants to set up a game that's going to revolve around maybe sneak attack. But again, we know that Jack does have the Detention Sphere in his hand. So, if Huey were to cast a Show and Tell right now, Jack would be happy letting it resolve.
And again, the way that Huey played this game, I think he's at the point where I'm just going to try to be aggressive. And again, I don't know if this had to do with the fact that he mulliganed, but sometimes that does change the way you sort of approach a game. Sometimes you will see players be a little bit more aggressive than they have to do because they feel like they're behind, even though they might not necessarily be, just because they mulligan once.
You see Huey's going to play a Scalding Tarn and pass the turn back. Jack does draw a Flooded Strand for his turn. He's going to play that, and now he's got access to be able to hardcast a Force of Will. You see the counterbalance, and you see the Detention Sphere and the Entreat the Angels. You know, it's not time for him to make Angels just yet. See, Huey draws his card, and he's going to think a little bit about what he wants to do here.
Yeah, and thankfully Jack hasn't really drawn much action. You know, Vendilion Click would be huge, but you know, Huey's still in a position where he can kind of draw out of this if Jack just continues to draw lands or like non-essential spells. You know.
Yeah, the thing that's really difficult for Huey here is just that, you know, he's a little bit behind because he knows that Jack certainly has some permission in his hand, but he also has to bob and weave around a counterbalance that obviously Jack can't control, and he can't control what's turned over either. So he just has to cast his spells as normal and hope that the counterbalance misses.
Well, I think when he decides to go for it, the turn before he decides to go for it, he'll probably Echo in Truth the counterbalance at the end of the turn, and if he's able to bounce it, he doesn't have to worry about it. And if he can't, if it doesn't bounce because it gets countered, then he knows the top card is a 2-mana spell anyway. So. I think he's okay with the counterbalance being in play right now. It'd be much worse if there's a top, but.
And you're going to see Huey sacrifice the Scalding Tarn as well. Looks like he might be going for a sneak attack here.
Yeah, and I know he has a misdirection, but I don't believe he has another. I don't believe he has another spell. And the bad thing here is that even if he is able to resolve it, we know Jack has the Detention Sphere for it anyway.
Yep.
Because it doesn't look like he has a Lotus Petal to actually sneak in a Grizzlebrand this turn anyway. So Jack might actually just let it resolve, although I doubt he'll let it resolve for fear of a Lotus Petal.
Yeah, I would be a little bit surprised. And it's going to start with counterbalance here. He does have 4s in his deck, and that's a Red Elemental Blast. So let's see if he's going to hardcast a Force of Will, or is he just going to let this resolve and Detention Sphere that. Again, if Huey is sandbagging a Lotus Petal, it's not going to work, but you're going to see a Force of Will here, and he's going to
he could always counter the Lotus Petal.
Yeah, that's what I mean,
I agree with you. Why not just go for it?
Misdirection.
Yeah, and the last card is just a Grizzlebrand. At this point, I think it's fine to let that resolve, because if Huey does in fact have one last card in his deck in his hand, then you know he can't get into play this turn anyway. Might as well just let him keep it in his hand and just Detention Sphere it. You don't need to waste your Red Elemental Blast.
Yeah, that Red Elemental Blast is going to be good over the course of this game. And with the Detention Sphere in his hand, I agree with you. I don't think there's much of a reason to fight over this with that.
Yeah, because you know, if Huey top stacks a Show and Tell, you know, you're getting rid of one of your Red Elemental Blasts right now. Because even though it's on top of his deck. So I think he's responding to the misdirection by sacking to search, and the counterbalance will trigger again.
Yeah, that's what it looks like right now. You're going to see that here. We'll see if he remembers the counterbalance trigger here.
Yeah, and again, because Huey only has one card left in his hand, which it does look like, if it's a Grizzlebrand, he won't be able to play a Lotus Petal and sneak it into play, which is what Jack might have been afraid of initially. So, you know, Jack still has a Detention Sphere, so he can say, okay, fine, Misdirection Resolve, I'll save my Red Elemental Blast. I'll just Detention Sphere your sneak attack, and now the only thing I have to worry about is a top-decked Show and Tell. Although, he could be afraid of a second sneak attack.
All right, so Polluted Delta, and now you're going to see Red Elemental Blast.
Yeah. So
you know what Jack is doing. You can understand it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like it's going to be correct, because now he can lose to a top decked.
Well, the thing is,
Show and Tell.
I think he's also a little open to a sneak attack, you know. So I think he basically says, okay, if you top deck a Show and Tell, you'll get your Grizzlebrand into play, but I'll put my Detention Sphere into play. I have more 3s in my deck, so I'm more likely to counter it blind with a counterbalance. Plus, if I Detention Sphere your sneak attack, and you play another, and you top deck another sneak attack, well, then I have no answers.
Sure.
You know, because I already used my Detention Sphere.
You know, assuming that card for Huey is actually Grizzlebrand in his hand, still, Show and Tell's a pretty live draw here, because yes, it's going to put the Detention Sphere into play and take care of it.
But he'll draw a lot.
But he's going to draw some cards, as you see. Jack draws
wow.
a Venser Shaper Savant. That's a heck of a draw.
So now he actually has everything he needs.
You see Huey draws a card and just says go. And Jack going to take a draw step here. He runs into a
Vendilion Click. So literally the perfect 2 cards on top of his deck to actually make sure that he seals this game up.
Huey going to play a Scalding Tarn, just pass the turn back. End of turn, Jack is going to cast a Vendilion Click. And we'll see who he's going to target with this. He could target himself and move that Entreat the Angels to the bottom because he has so much permission in his hand that he doesn't really, he doesn't really need that. But he may also target Huey as well. But he's going to target himself, put Entreat on the bottom, get himself a new card, which is going to be a Red Elemental Blast. These last couple of draw steps,
pretty good draw so far.
have been pretty good for Jack as he draws a Plains for the turn. He's going to play that and be able to say go.
So, yeah, pretty unfortunate for Huey. I mean, he had the mulligan, but he did mulligan into a turn 2 kill, or a turn 2 show and tell rather. But and against some decks that'd be great, but it just so happens he ran into a heavily permission deck. So
yeah, this is a deck where Jack has a lot of permission after sideboard, as you went over when we were discussing the sideboards for this matchup. He has a ton of ways to punish someone for casting a show and tell or a naked sneak attack. It's not very hard for him to do, and you've seen it in this game especially, as Huey does draw a Red Elemental Blast for the turn. Huey trying to rebuild, but he is being clocked there by the Vendilion Click. 3 points of damage a turn. Passes it back. Jack's going to draw a card, and it looks like this might be a miracle.
On fire the dam?
Not you.
So it's interesting that he has the Enlightened Tutor in his hand too. So if he did board in the Humility, if Huey does in fact draw a sneak attack, he can actually just Enlightened Tutor for Humility, put it on top of his deck, and then counterbalance it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of plays here for Jack to ensure that he wins this game. Looks like he's going to retreat for 1.
I'm just playing very conservative here. He's going to knock Huey down to 10.
So
he's going to have a 4/4 Angel as well.
Yeah, I think I would have preferred to just make 2 guys so you kill Huey next turn.
You're going to see Red Elemental Blast here from Huey.
I think you're fine with that.
Might as well take a look at the counterbalance trigger first.
Yeah.
That's an island.
No. So
Right,
at least you can counter Lotus Petals. You can counter you can counter Lotus Petals. But yep. So still has an Angel. So now it's a 3-turn clock, and then a 2-turn clock. Or he could just cast the Venser next turn, and then attack for 6.
Yeah.
So it could still be a 2-turn clock.
Huey draws a card. He has an Echoing Truth in his hand. You see him Echoing Truthing, targeting the Angel token. He wants to get that out of here. We know that Jack does have a Red Elemental Blast. Is this worth fighting over? He could also Enlighten Tutor and put a two mana.
Put a counterbalance on top of his deck.
2 mana enchantment on top of his deck if he wants to do things that way.
Yeah, there are any other 2-mana enchantments in his deck? No. Although I don't hate that plan because it basically, you still have your threat, and again, Enlightened Tutor is not doing much else for you.
You see, he's going to play that island that Huey knew about. That Echoing Truth resolves, and we're going to keep going here.
He does have a show and tell, but again, not quite good enough.
Yeah, Jack's been sitting on the detention sphere for a very, very long time. You see a Lotus Petal in Huey's hand as well. Lotus Petal, you're going to see a counterbalance reveal here.
Yeah.
Island, take care of it. Huey doing that just to gain information, mostly.
Well, he saw it from last turn, I believe, right?
No, this is a new island. There's a Red Elemental Blast to take care of the show and tell.
So Jack thinking about Enlightened Tutor for Humility here?
He's considering, Enlightened Tutor. He's also considering maybe Venser to, start dealing some damage and possibly get this game over with.
I think I like Enlightened Tutor for top, to be honest. Just like, Enlightened Tutor for top's not bad.
Yeah, Enlightened Tutor for top starts putting Huey in a soft lock here. Also allows him to manipulate the top of his library every turn. Maybe find that Elspeth. Maybe find an additional copy of Entreat the Angels.
Yeah. Yeah, if I was Jack, I would definitely go for the Sensei's top right here. I mean, it makes Terminus a lot more live against like a random Emrakul, and you can't just do nothing,
Well, you're going to see him tap some mana here, so maybe it looks like he's going to go for Venser.
Really?
He's tapping 4.
No.
Taps, so he changes his mind.
So yeah, decides not to go for top.
And you're going to see him.
Another land.
He's going to draw the island that he did reveal. And he does just pass the turn back. So Huey going to untap. He's going to take a draw step. He draws a mystery card.
And again, Enlightened Tutor for Humility is a way to counter sneak attack, so maybe he doesn't want to pull the trigger just yet.
That's a Arid Mesa for Jack. He passes the turn back, intent playing a very long game. Huey passes back to Jack. Jack draws another detention sphere.
So, yeah, I mean, again, Jack's in pretty good shape right here, but yeah, he really needs to draw a Jace, the Mind Sculptor, or something.
Huey draws a Gristlebrand for the turn.
If only he had Urborg.
He does pass the turn back. We're going to finally see Enlightened Tutor be cast here. We think. We've seen Jack tap mana on the instep before and decide against it.
Those of you at home who can't see off camera, Eric Froelich just snuck into the building and is trying to sneak a Cavern of Souls and an Urborg to Huey Jensen.
That's going to be tough.
Unfortunately, I don't think Huey sees him. But are we going for top here, or?
You know, top, humility, both good choices. Both attention spheres in his 75 in his hand right now, so those are out of the way.
So and looks like he's going for top.
It does look like you saw him pull top and humility to the front of his deck as far as decisions, deciding which way he wants to go. Because humility, it is also once that's in play.
And again, I don't quite understand this play because again, if you're going to make this play, why not make it like 4 turns ago?
Sure.
I can understand if you're saying, I don't want to make this play because I want to be able to hard counter a sneak attack because I don't have a good counter spell for it, you know. He has a Venser, but if he sneaks a Grizzlebrand to play, he's going to be able to draw 7 cards, and then maybe he can sneak an Amacron to play, which, you know, could potentially just kill me. So, again, I liked it 4 turns ago, but, you know, if you have a strategy or if you have a plan, I think you might want to just stick with it. But, again, still a pretty good play. Gives him a lot of reach. He's going to be able to top now. Kind of a soft lock with counterbalance, and it lets him dig a little bit more for some threats, as well as making his Terminus alive.
Yeah, and you're going to see him top here. You see Terminus, Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, and a counter spell. So,
yeah.
Oof, really good top there.
Yeah, so now the top counterbalance part of this game is going to start to take over, and as is Jace's Fate Seal. Now you do see Huey does have those 2 fetch lands, so he can break up the Fate Sealing that does take place initially, as you're going to see Jack reorganize really quickly here on his upkeep. Take a draw, and it is a counterspell, so he's choosing not to draw the Jace yet. He's just playing this game very, very conservatively.
Yeah, but again, Jace on top of your library does counter sneak attack.
Yep.
So.
You see him take an island.
But I think, yeah, he's playing it very conservatively. It looks like he's just not going to draw the Jace again.
Yeah, he's choosing to draw an island.
He really just wants to counter sneak attack. I think he knows the only way Huey can beat me is by getting a sneak attack into play. But the problem is that Huey has answers to counterbalance. You know, he has Red Elemental Blast. He has Echoing Truth.
And now you see Elspeth, Knight Errant, and Jace. So now he's going to be happy taking one of those planeswalkers, leaving one of them on top, which will leave a 4-mana way to counter sneak attack, and he'll probably pull the trigger on one of these planeswalkers.
And I like the Elspeth because it can't get Red Elemental Blast.
Yeah.
So
there will be no fight.
Finally has a threat that he can threaten to kill Huey with, and looks like it might resolve. Huey might.
Let's see if he wants to fight over this. You know, he might have a Forcible and a blue card in his hand.
And, you know, again, fighting over it really depends on whether or not Huey thinks he can go off in the next 2 turns. Because, again, Elspeth is going to threaten lethal very quickly.
Yeah.
So
you see Huey's going to sacrifice a Misty Rainforest right now. Might be searching for a 5th land to try to hardcast a Forcible right now.
Yeah. And we know he has a Red Elemental Blast as well, I believe. So, but again, Jack has the top in play, so he can choose not to let that resolve. But that does, again, make Sneak Attack live if he top decks it. So, very tough position for Jack right here.
You are going to see him tap 5 mana. You are going to see a hardcast Forcible here from Huey Jensen. Counterbalance on the stack. It's going to arrange some cards here.
Looks like it's a Geist on there.
There is a Geist there.
Geist, Terminus.
And Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah.
So no 5s. And Geist is obviously a nice way to close out games. you know, while Huey's trying to get set up. Obviously, we're not gonna come to that point this time.
This is actually a really tough spot for Jack now because if Huey plays this a certain way, he could maybe win with a through the breach. You know, because by tapping all his mana this turn, Jack doesn't have access to Vents or Shaper Savant as a way to bounce the attacker. So if Huey did in fact board in those through the breaches, that could be a huge top deck for him.
Yeah, in Huey's sideboard, he does have 2 copies of that card that he may have sideboarded in here.
Yeah, and you know, because he topped and wasn't able to counterbalance the Force of Will, Huey knows that there's no 5-drop on top 3 cards. So, but again, not sure if he boarded in the through the breach or not, and we haven't seen it in either of this boarded games so far.
So Elspeth Knight Errant is going to resolve. The Soldier token is going to be put into play, and we're likely going to see Jack pass the turn back. So now the big question is, as Jack does play an island, does Huey have through the breach?
And you know, thing about through the breach is it's not going to win Huey the game outright because Jack is in fact at 16. So if he through the breach Emrakul would be okay, but it's not going to win him the game. Jack will still have an Elspeth in play, and plenty of lands to cast. Even after the Annihilator, he'll have plenty of lands to cast events or following turn. But maybe if you can get a Grizzlebrand into play.
You see Spell Pierce the draw here for Huey, and he's reaching.
Not sure if there's a show and tell or not. Again, we know show and tell won't be very effective.
You see Ancient Tomb, and he's just going to pass the turn back. So since his Divine Top activation here from Jack, Jack is in the clear. Terminus, the top card here, he's going to move that card to his hand. St. Trap being a 3, and of course Jace the Mind Sculptor being a 4, means that he can counter either Show and Tell or Sneak Attack now with his Sensei's Divine Top plus Counterbalance. So he's got complete control, so it is actually going to have to be through the breach now.
Yeah, and the problem is now he's completely untapped. He has Venser in his hand, and he also has a Terminus.
But
it looks like he drew the Terminus, which is kind of unfortunate because he really needed it on top of his deck to secure the win.
No, I mean, he has Venser in his hand, so he's doing just fine. He's got every angle covered right now.
But yeah. And there's a Caracas too, so yep, he's gonna draw the Caracas right here. Yeah, so he's got pretty much every angle covered. Not much Huey can do.
He has Caracas, he has Venser, he has Elspeth Providing Clock, he has Top and Counterbalance with a 3 and a 4, the 3 being Geist of St. Traff, the 4 being Jace the Mind Sculptor. This is about the hardest lock that you can get into right now.
I think we could stop talking about what ways Huey can theoretically win because
as Huey does extend the hand. Jack Colwell with Blue-White Helm defeats Huey Jensen in a very good and entertaining 3-set match. Huey with a very nice performance this weekend, his first loss, but Jack will be going to the finals, and we'll see